Webtoon family, how you guys doing today? I'm Webtoon King, and today I'll be doing my chapter review of Hardcore Leveling Warrior, chapter 14. Now, before we go on with the review, let's talk about what happened last chapter. The first thing that happened last chapter is Ethan and our gang going to get Lee Eagle weapon. Lee is the weapon master or the sword master, whatever they call him. His weapon that they're looking for is a Sea Dragon sword, and he's getting that weapon so he can beat the Fist Master that defeated him. Well, we learned that defeated him last chapter. The dungeon we're going to is called the F Up dungeon to get his weapon, but the weird thing about this dungeon is that they keep calling it different names throughout this chapter, so look out for that. There is an explanation for it. I will say when we get to why it's different. Anyway, we're talking about Lee. He has to fight himself in this dungeon. He has to fight a perfect copy of him. But the difference is that the doppelganger is probably going to be his best version of himself from the last OG series of Hardcore Leveling Warrior. So the end game, he's going to have to fight his end game version of himself. So that's the difference between this doppelganger. We also see two important characters in chapter 13. The characters are S, and the other one we see is the Fistmaster. The important thing, we do see S because S, we saw him before, but the other thing we saw is his summoning. And we get to meet all old friends that he's controlling now that he has Carter's ability. The last thing we learn is that the Dragon of Light has brothers and sisters. And we also met a character named Father, so I don't know if it's her father. We don't have an explanation, but for the very least, we know that she has brothers and sisters. So it'd be interesting to see their abilities and how powerful they are. Now let's talk about what we learned this chapter. We learned more about the Ethnic dungeon, which they keep changing. Like I said, they keep changing the name. There's a reason, so I'm gonna move on from that. We also learned that Ethan teach us a way to easily beat this dungeon. So, like, we know he's a pro gamer, so he always have a way to beat dungeons and stuff, which shows his intelligence. And I like that this webtoon does that. It's not just being strong, it's about having information, and Ethan has a lot of information due to him actually, I think he memorized the guild, the guidebook for the Hardcore Leveling Warriors series. We get to see the green doppelganger. We see Ethan using his mechanic class to make a water gun. I know, just wait until my full review, you're gonna understand why that's important. Remember, his class is mechanic, so he's able to make stuff with the water gun, but either way, I'll explain later on. Ethan is also having a barbecue this chapter, which is crazy, but that explains the name of the chapter, which this chapter is called K Barbecue inside the dungeon. So it makes sense why that's the chapter name. We finally get to see H. And I was right about who his identity is. I've been right this whole time. I've been speculating, but I will repeat it when I actually get to that part of the chapter. I don't want to say at the beginning of the chapter, but I was right about who he is. And at the end of the chapter, we get to see Ethan going back to his previous class. So that was very exciting. When I saw that, I was really happy. I started smiling. Now, story time. This is the part of the review where I talk about the main points of the chapters and then clarify anything I talked about in the beginning. So, the beginning of the chapter, we see the Fist Master, and we see his name, his official name, what the church gave him, basically. His official name is K. That's his name. Like the other guy, his name S. I guess we don't know his real name yet, but K is the official name for the Fistmaster, so I'll be calling him K from now on. We also see that K has a secretary named Shunko Tanaki. Hopefully I say that name right, but I suck with Japanese name. And it looked like it's her job to feed him, make sure he eat right, which is funny because the Fistmaster just want to eat junk food, so she has to take it away from him and basically like put her above his head because he's short and she keep playing with him. It's a funny scene. Go read the chapter. She also explained to him the dungeon. She didn't just take the snack to be mean. She took the snack to explain the dungeon that they're going to right now. She's explaining the information to Kay. So basically the dungeon is the SS rank, which they name it differently in the chapter. I can't remember the name they gave him. But the dungeon is actually called Doppelganger Dungeon. So basically, the reason I believe they're saying a different name for the same dungeon they're going, that Ethan is going, that H is going, is because, remember, they're Japanese. Kay is Japanese, so it makes sense why the Fistmaster, they have a different name for the same dungeon that Ethan is going to. So I think each region or each country is calling it different, so that's why it confused me at first. But I think most of these characters live in a different country, so you might see different names for dungeons, but it's the same country. Kay's secretary informed him that the monster, the base monsters they're gonna fight is at least a level 80. They're able to transform to the people they're fighting and basically mimic their abilities. And the last information basically tell Kay is that they need to fight the monster for an entire hour before they can go into the boss room. So their mission is to beat the doppelganger for an hour and defeat Ethan's group because H told them to. Which Kay kind of dismissed his secretary by telling her he's the best. So he's very cocky, which makes sense if you read chapter 13. Chapter 13 he went off. He might have that cute little kid physique, but he's strong. We see Ethan and his group arriving to the dungeon that everybody's about to eventually meet at. The funny thing about this scene is how Ethan keep calling Bibby newbie or something. And he does this not only now, but throughout the chapter. They do it with everybody, basically. And you see them pull out Salt for some reason, but they do explain why they have all this stuff they're pulling out the bag right now. So we have a quick flashback to explain why they have salt and other stuff in the back. So the flashback starts for them going to the store, basically. Getting stuff. Technically we have Bibby teleport them to the store. You see them buying meat, salt, and a water gun. I know it's a weird combination. Trust me, it's gonna be important. Then basically made Bibby pays for the all of it because Lee told Bibby like, yo, I left my wallet at home. So basically, he's broke. He probably didn't leave his wallet. So we have Bibby spending like $760 at the store. Throughout this whole process in the store, we just see them goofing off. Our whole cast was just goofing up the whole time, and it's kind of made me happy to see this. So after they got done with the flashback, we moved back to the current timeline with us being in the dungeon, the effing up dungeon, or the other name is Doppelganger Dungeon. There's a couple other names they keep calling this dungeon. But anyways, this dungeon is to decide how they're going to get the eagle sword of Lee, this sea dragon sword. So they get to the dungeon. We see the green doppelganger attack our group. This is also where we get the description of them, where we learn that they're an evolved version of the slime, which you probably can tell if you saw the picture of the green slime. You can kind of figure it out. But anyways, they're an evolved version of the slime. So when they start attacking us, that's when the hours start. Like the hour timeline starts before we can meet the boss. So we have to defeat 200 of them. I believe it was 200. We see one of what's his name? Drip try to attack them, and he couldn't hit them. Like his arm, like kind of like you could see him hit it, and it felt like he was hitting the wall. So they kind of beat him. Not really beat him, but he wasn't getting anywhere. So we see the girls get a water gun from Ethan. Yeah, it was a Shenton water gun that Ethan gave to the Zoro and Armin to defeat these monsters. And they were able to easily defeat it. And we finally get an answer to why they had salt from the why they even showed the flashback. Basically, the salt was able to defeat the monsters because Ethan in the OG series, he read the Guild book, so he knows most of the monsters' weakness and all that stuff. So he basically explained to the group that the green monsters are basically like a snail. They have the same body type, they're the same anatomy. So that's why they're able to beat the monsters easily. And Bibi basically asks Ethan the important question is, yo, why did nobody think of this? And he even gave him a funny response back. It's like, nobody ever thought of bringing a water gun with salt water to defeat these monsters. Like, nobody ever thought of it. So it kind of shows you the difference in knowledge between the number one player, Ethan, and the OG series. So his knowledge is important. It's not just him being strong. It's him having the knowledge that I find appealing about this series. But the problem is that Zoro and Armin were able to defeat those monsters too fast, so they got 50 minutes of just rest time. So basically, Armin asked, no, was it Armin? No, it was Zoro. Zoro asked Ethan, like, well, why'd you buy pork then? He basically said, yo, that's just for barbecue, something to eat, for him to eat. So basically, Ethan used his ability to build a gas stove, and because he still had the mech ability. And he built it. They start having the barbecue for the last 15 minutes before the dungeon boss opened. They were just having fun, and this is very like warm. This scene warmed my heart because throughout this barbecue of them having fun eating with each other, you see the difference between their old self and how depressed they were kind of in the OG series, and how happy they are in this series. You see a panel of them side by side, and just reading it made my heart like warm up. But we finally got the boss room to open, so the 15 minutes been passed. We see, but before I move on, we see H, and I was right about who H was. And H is, guess who H is? Like, nobody knew who it was. Heart Heater. It's Heart Heater. I was right. Everybody was probably had the same answer, so I'm kind of happy they kind of introduced this early. I thought they were going to drag it on, but it's Heart Heater. But due to H showing up, Ethan uses his experience box to level up. So he has the ability to choose a new class right now. And guess what class he picked? He picked this OG Gambler class. And Lee basically moved on to the dungeon to fight the dungeon boss so he can get his sword. And we see Ethan stopping H, Fire Dragon. And basically the class he picked was the Amateur Gambler class, and that's his OG class. I just don't think it's his OG class. I think it's a step down because it's an amateur, so I don't think it's the full Gambler class yet. But I guess we get to see his experience. This is his OG class, so he should know how to use it. I love this. And just by the way, I love this. But that's the end of the chapter. And my rating for this chapter is a 10 out of 10. We got confirmation of who H was. We honestly got the names of Fistmaster, what they call him in the organization. We got a lot of information I care about. We got Ethan picking his OG class, so that's a 10 out of 10 for me. But anyways, the art is always amazing, so I'm not even going to take too long talking about the art. And do the YouTube stuff. Comment down below, subscribe. Actually comment too, like what's your favorite part of the chapter. And that's it. Toon Family, we out.